Chapter 366. Early onset moments later, Hanli swept his sleeve, dispersing the surrounding restrictions, then streaked out from the sea toward his cave abode. Yet midway through his return, a dull, oppressive weight suddenly pressed down upon his mind. What is this? Have I truly not recovered? He closed his eyes to examine his internal state, but the instant he activated the spirit refinement technique, the vast spiritual sense within him erupted without warning. It churned and surged violently, as though countless fine blades were hacking into his consciousness. The pain was sudden and unbearable, forcing an agonized cry from his throat. He clutched his head, his face draining pale in an instant. His figure froze in midair, then dropped straight down like a lifeless stone, plunging into the sea below. Cold seawater engulfed him, yet it offered no relief. The agony only intensified, eroding his sanity as a faint crimson glow crept over his eyes. Hanli instinctively tried to open his eyes, but overwhelming grogginess held him down. When he forced them open at last, all before him was a blurred haze. Savage howls and roars echoed endlessly, piercing straight into his mind and setting his blood ablaze. A long-suppressed fury surged forth, choking him with suffocating pressure. As though only by venting it all could his sanity be restored, his arms lashed out wildly, fists and palms striking in frantic disorder as he sought release. He wanted to roar, yet his own voice was drowned in the chaos. The surrounding din grew ever louder, and in that madness he seemed to find an outlet. At that moment, his mind was utterly empty. As the uproar slowly faded, the fury within him ebbed away, replaced by a thick, bloody stench in the air. His vision gradually cleared, and the first thing he saw was an endless field of crimson, like a boundless sea of blood. Mangled carcasses of countless creatures lay strewn everywhere, as if a horrifying massacre had just occurred. Suddenly, sharp pain speared through his mind, snapping his consciousness fully awake. Hanli shook his head, clarity returning little by little. Weakness flooded his body, every inch throbbing as though he had just endured a ferocious battle. Lifting his head, he realized he stood upon an island, turbulent seas stretching before him. His memories were tangled. Everything after leaving the small island where he refined the Tao pill was a blank. He had no idea how he had arrived here. He tried to recall the events, but the instant he did, agony surged again through his mind. He hastily abandoned the attempt, shaking his head until the pain eased. A sudden thought struck him. Turning around, he saw that the island beneath his feet spanned dozens of kilometers, yet it was utterly devastated and on the verge of collapse. What had once been a mountain range at its center was split clean in two, forming a massive lake as seawater poured in. All other peaks were shattered, all vegetation erased, a scene of utter ruin. Shock filled Hanli's eyes. With the pain largely subsided, he released his immense spiritual sense. What he discovered stunned him anew. The seabed below was equally ravaged, riddled with deep craters and trenches like a plowed wasteland. In places, fissures ran so deep that magma had burst forth, now long solidified. The destruction spanned an enormous region. Within a radius of thousands of kilometers, all islands had been obliterated, some sunk entirely, others torn into tatters like the one beneath him. Scattered among the ruins lay the corpses of countless demon beasts. Many at the body integration and even Grand Ascension stage. All had met horrifying ends. One Grand Ascension worm over 1,000 feet long had been ripped into several pieces, its blood dyeing vast swaths of the sea red, terror still frozen in its eyes. Just then, a bolt of golden lightning descended nearby, revealing Taoist Xie. "What happened here, Brother Xie?" Hanli asked. Han replied. Then replied, "Do you truly not remember, fellow Taoist? You caused all of this?" Me, Hanli faltered, a chill of foreboding rising in his heart. "On your way back, it was as though you suddenly went mad," Taoist Xie explained. "You rampaged like one possessed, destroying everything in sight. You lost all sanity. No matter how I called to you, there was no response." Hanli was quiet for a long moment. "How long did it last?" "About 15 minutes," Taoist Xie answered. Hanli's expression darkened. With that reminder, fragments returned, searing pain in his head, then darkness, and only an overwhelming killing intent left behind. How did this happen? Was it some hidden attack? Suddenly, realization struck. He raised his head and murmured, "The spirit refinement technique." At his current cultivation, Even a golden immortal could not tamper with his mind unnoticed. The only explanation lay in the technique itself. He hesitated, then tried to activate it once more. Instantly, excruciating pain surged through his mind, forcing a groan from him. He stopped at once, and only then did the agony slowly fade. That confirmed it. His expression grew even grimmer. According to He Kang, mastering the third level of the spirit refinement technique should have spared him crisis for 30 to 40,000 years. Yet less than 20,000 years had passed. Why had the spiritual sense crisis already erupted? Had He Kang deceived him, or had some other factor triggered this early onset? Han Li slowly exhaled, steadying himself. No matter the cause, a solution had to be found. Otherwise, his fate would be to become a mindless beast driven only by slaughter. Fortunately, this had occurred in a secluded region, and the first episode had been brief. Otherwise, the consequences would have been disastrous. Yet even now, there was no telling when the next onset would strike, and from what he knew, each episode would last longer, with ever shorter intervals. According to He Kang, the only cure was to cultivate the fourth level of the spirit refinement technique. Back at the Blaze Dragon Dao, Han Li had researched the art, but believing he had tens of thousands of years left, he had not pursued it deeply. Records in the northern glacial immortal region were scarce, and few even knew of this forbidden technique. The Merit Conveyance Palace held only the first 3 levels, restricted to Dao Lords alone. Useless to him now. Han Li's brows knit tightly. If even a great sect like the Blaze Dragon Dao lacked the latter half of the spirit refinement technique, where in the Black Wind Sea could he possibly find it? Chapter 367, Taking the Pill. Han Li stood silently where he was for a brief while, his thoughts still as Taoist Shay hovered before him without a word. Suddenly, a notion stirred in his mind. He flipped his hand, producing an azure tiger mask. He gazed at it thoughtfully for a moment, eyes flickering, then put it away once more. Without delay, he also stowed Taoist Xie and departed as a streak of azure light cutting through the sky. Several days later, Han Li reappeared above his cave abode. After sweeping his spiritual sense across the surroundings, he finally relaxed inwardly. The island's restrictions remained untouched, and the cave entrance was tightly sealed, no sign of intrusion since his departure. He descended at once, slipping through the barriers and entering the abode. After a brief inspection of all areas, he went straight to his secret chamber. With a wave of his sleeve, a yellow light barrier enveloped the room. Only then did he don the azure tiger mask and activate the Transient Guild's array projection. As he prepared to release a mission, he paused. Though tracking a member through a mask was nearly impossible, he had used this tiger mask for too long. Continuing would invite needless danger. It would be wiser to change masks when the chance arose. Having resolved this, Han Li released a mission seeking the latter half of the spirit refinement technique. As the art was forbidden in the Immortal Realm, he described it only vaguely, noting its ability to greatly enhance spiritual sense without naming it outright. Yet any informed cultivator would know what he sought. He offered generous compensation, even leaving room for negotiation. Once finished, he put the mask away and let out a soft sigh. For now, the Transient Guild was his only recourse. If it failed, he might have no choice but to leave the Black Wind Sea. In his early days, the guild had brought many surprises, but as his cultivation rose, so too did his troubles, and its usefulness was waning. The long delay in gathering Dao Pill ingredients still weighed on his mind. Shaking off these thoughts, he closed his eyes and activated the spirit refinement technique. His vast spiritual sense circulated through his mind, swift at first, then gradually slowing. A cool, refreshing clarity spread within, free of discomfort, as though the earlier crisis had been a distant illusion. Relief washed over him. His spiritual sense had fully recovered. While he knew another crisis would come someday, it would not be soon. He then produced an azure jade box, sealing it with several golden talismans. Even so, faint law fluctuations seeped through. The Dao Pill he had refined lay within. He studied the box briefly, set it aside, and closed his eyes to enter his optimal state. 3 days later, Han Li opened his eyes. His immortal power and spiritual sense were at their peak, his heart calm as still water. With a sweep of his sleeve, Taoist Xie appeared amid golden lightning. "Brother Xie," Han Li said. "This place is secluded, but I'll need you to keep watch once more." Taoist Xie nodded silently and vanished again. Han Li reinforced the chamber's door with a dense azure barrier. Only then did he retrieve the jade box, remove the talismans, and open it to reveal the golden Dao pill. He examined it closely between his fingers, then swallowed it in one motion. Pain surged instantly. His brows knotted as radiant golden light burst from his body. The mantra treasured axis manifested behind him, spinning and blazing, all 360 time Dao runes, shining far brighter than before. A golden Dao mark appeared upon his body, identical to the pills, followed swiftly by a second. Their light bathed him in gold, countless runes radiating terrifying law power as they poured into his flesh. Eyes shut tight, Han Li formed hand seals without pause. 5 years passed in a blink. Throughout that time, the island housing his cave abode remained shrouded in layered restrictions, utterly concealed. One morning, ripples stirred the sea nearby. A white pig-dolphin beast emerged, jade-like and pristine, swimming toward the island. Having consolidated its deity transformation cultivation, it paddled swiftly with glowing limbs. Fresh from seclusion, it sought Han Li once more, carrying its treasured collection of ores and spirit materials in hopes of exchange. Circling the island, it soon met an invisible yet gentle barrier. Understanding it was set by the human immortal, the beast dared not force entry. Seeing no response, it prepared to leave, when suddenly overwhelming energy fluctuations erupted from the island. The beast trembled, frozen in terror, as world's origin chi churned violently, forming countless golden vortexes across the sea, vast and small alike, each filled with radiant runes. The sight was magnificent and dreadful, law power surging in all directions. Then, like a receding tide, all vortexes converged into a single point, vanishing in an instant. What remained was a massive golden thread of light, stretching across the sky, swaying like a living dragon, rumbling with profound time law power. Gradually, the brilliance faded, leaving the thread serene and translucent, its power even more profound and perfectly ordered. Space in its wake seemed frozen. In a flash of golden light from below, the thread shrank and vanished into the cave abode. Calm returned at once. Staring in stunned silence, the pig-dolphin beast finally turned and fled, plunging back into the sea. Though awe-inspiring, the phenomenon was far less grand than a Dao tribulation and drew little attention. Chapter 368, You're awake elsewhere in the Immortal Realm. A boundless expanse lay shrouded in radiant gold. Countless golden clouds of varying sizes drifted ceaselessly, rising and falling as they shifted into indistinct, ever-changing forms, painting a scene both solemn and mesmerizing. Upon one such cloud stood a colossal golden stone plaque, towering over 100,000 feet high. Brilliant golden light surged endlessly from its surface, swirling like tides. The plaque was densely covered in golden rune inscriptions, almost without a single empty space. These runes differed in size and luster. The larger ones, often as big as houses, shone with dazzling brilliance, while the smaller, fist-sized runes were far dimmer. Some remained perfectly still, while others flickered rapidly, releasing formidable fluctuations of time law power. Suddenly, the stone plaque trembled and erupted with blinding golden radiance, accompanied by a piercing screech. Near the bottom of the plaque, a blank area lit up as a new line of golden text appeared, softly pulsing with light. Moments later, the glow faded, and the plaque returned to its former stillness. In the space before it, countless specks of golden light gathered, forming a massive golden eye. An indistinct, emotionless voice echoed forth, neither male nor female in tone. It seems one more has mastered the laws of time. The voice lingered briefly before dissipating, and the golden eye scattered back into countless motes of light. Within the secret chamber of his cave abode, Han Li sat bathed in resplendent golden radiance. Behind him, the mantra-treasured axis revolved slowly, solemn and steady. Above his head hovered a translucent golden thread, about a foot long, swaying gently like a living spirit serpent. Though reduced countless times in size, the time law fluctuations it emitted were undiminished, saturating the entire chamber and influencing all within it. Aside from Han Li and the golden light surrounding him, everything else seemed frozen in absolute stillness. Han Li opened his eyes, excitement flickering across his face as he gazed at the golden thread. Mastering the laws of time had been an arduous journey, Years had passed merely to digest the Tao pill, followed by several more spent comprehending its power. Along the way, danger had arisen more than once, yet his careful preparations and ample reserves of precious pills had allowed him to persevere. His previous failures had not been in vain either. Each attempt had brought him closer, paving the way for this final success. Now that he had grasped the laws of time, everything felt different. His understanding of this profound force had deepened, and even his comprehension of the mantra axis scripture had subtly transformed. Most notably, his control over the mantra treasured axis had markedly improved. In the instant the time law thread was formed, he had even sensed a faint trace of time's passage throughout the world itself. After a long while, the excitement within him gradually settled. Forming a hand seal, he caused the golden light around the thread to fade, and the chamber instantly returned to normal. As he continued shaping seals, the golden thread responded to his will, stretching, shrinking, and even knotting itself. Each transformation subtly altered the time law power it emitted, drawing a thoughtful look from Han Li. Clearly, this thread held depths far beyond his initial expectations, though there would be ample time to explore them later. Maintaining the thread consumed vast immortal spiritual power. Just as he prepared to stow it away, a sudden thought arose, and he summoned the heaven-controlling vial instead. He had examined it countless times before without result, but now, having mastered the laws of time, perhaps its secrets would finally reveal themselves. Han Li took a steadying breath. Before he could act, the heaven-controlling vial burst forth with radiance like a green sun, slipping from his grasp to hover in midair. At the same time, the mantra treasured axis flared brilliantly and began spinning at high speed as the golden time law thread shot into it. The axis shone 10 times brighter than before, all its time Tao runes lighting up in unison. At its center, the Eye of Truth took shape. Though still closed, it radiated dazzling light, golden runes flashing endlessly around it. Han Li's expression shifted slightly, yet he remained motionless. As before, he sensed that the vial, the axis, and even the time law thread were no longer under his control. Anticipation stirred within him. Whenever this happened, fortune often followed. Soon, the heaven-controlling vial and the mantra-treasured axis resonated together, their light intensifying as powerful energy fluctuations spread outward. Abruptly, the Eye of Truth snapped open, and the time law thread burst forth, vanishing into the vial. The heaven-controlling vial glowed vivid green and rapidly expanded to the size of a millstone. Countless green runes appeared across its surface, surging like stars in a night sky. The runes lifted free, converging inside the vial to form a churning green cloud, within which a vortex slowly emerged. Though the energy it released was subtle, the surrounding space rippled violently. Han Li raised an eyebrow as the cloud transformed into a thick pillar of green light that shot outward. Translucent rays spread, forming the same mysterious wall of light as before. A trace of disappointment flickered in his eyes. He had hoped for something new. Yet then, he noticed a green vortex pattern etched into the wall, identical to the one within the vial. The wall trembled as streaks of light flashed across it, all of which were devoured by the vortex as it rapidly expanded, from basin size to as large as a house in mere breaths. A tremendous suction force erupted, enveloping Han Li. His body remained unmoved, yet in the next instant, his spiritual sense was forcibly torn from him and dragged into the vortex. Sharp pain exploded in his head, and darkness claimed him. After an unknown span of time, Han Li slowly regained consciousness. Above him was a ruined ceiling riddled with holes and cobwebs, the sky faintly visible through the gaps. A loud yet indistinct sound echoed nearby. His entire body throbbed with agony, even lifting a finger feeling impossibly heavy. Turning his head with great effort, he found himself lying on a bed within what appeared to be a dilapidated temple. Beside him knelt a yellow-robed young boy with light golden skin, sobbing uncontrollably, the source of the noise. Han Li was utterly stunned. This was not his cave abode. How had he come here? As he tried to recall events, a splitting headache struck, forcing a muffled groan from his lips. The pain vanished just as swiftly, but before he could relax, a surge of chaotic, unfamiliar memories flooded his mind, fragmented, alien, and overwhelming. Before he could examine them, The young boy heard his groan and looked up, tears still clinging to his lashes but joy lighting his face. "Master, you're awake!" Chapter 369, Master and Disciple. Master? The single word made Hanli's heart waver. For a moment, he stood stunned. He was certain he had never accepted a disciple, yet the tear-streaked face of the boy before him stirred a faint, inexplicable familiarity. "I knew you'd be fine, Master," the boy cried with joy. "I managed to obtain 2 dragon gall flowers from Master Zhen and already refined them into medicine. I'll bring it right away." Wiping his tears, the boy sprang up and hurried outside. Hanli remained seated, dazed. Lowering his gaze, his pupils shrank. His body was thin and shriveled, clad in an azure Taoist robe, his hands gnarled like dead branches. What happened? Why have I aged so much? Where is this place? And who was that child? Questions surged endlessly. Though the pain had mostly subsided, Hanli struggled upright, bracing himself against the bed. He immediately examined his internal condition, only to grow more alarmed. This was not his body. Somehow he had possessed another. Worse still, the organs within were grievously injured, and a deadly poison festered inside. With his true cultivation, such wounds would have healed in moments. But this body was merely at the late foundation establishment stage, utterly incapable of suppressing either poison or injury. This vessel was nearing death. Hanli let out a bitter chuckle. Drawing upon the scant remaining magic power, he flicked a finger. Water droplets gathered, forming a shimmering mirror that revealed an elderly Taoist priest with a white beard. He dispersed it with a wave and fell into thought. As the ache in his head faded, memories surfaced. The time law thread, the mantra treasured axis, and the heaven-controlling vial had resonated with that wall of light, and the vortex had torn his soul away. An illusion? He surveyed his surroundings. Everything felt solid, real, flawless. If not illusion, then what? Sorting through the memories that emerged, realization dawned. This body belonged to Ling Yunzi, an elderly Taoist priest. The boy was his sole disciple, Li Yuanju. Ling Yunzi had been mortally wounded while fighting over a spirit plant and had perished not long ago. Hanli's soul had entered this corpse, leading the boy to believe his master had revived. At that moment, something caught his eye. To his left hovered a faint, nearly invisible golden axis, his mantra treasured axis. The 360 time Dao runes upon it glimmered softly. Already, more than 20 had dimmed, and with each passing breath another faded, just as before. A realization hovered on the edge of his mind, elusive and incomplete. Footsteps sounded. Li Yuanju rushed in, holding a clay bowl filled with black medicinal liquid fragrant with spiritual qi. "Master, please drink this." Hanli glanced at it and saw its value at once. "Set it there. I'll take it later," he said, rising slowly. "Master, your injuries." "I know my own body," Hanli replied, waving him off. Accustomed now to this frail form, he stepped outside. The boy, uneasy yet obedient, followed. The temple stood atop a lonely peak amid endless mountains. Wild cries echoed faintly, and the world's origin qi was thin. Hanli released his spiritual sense. Though the cultivation of this body was weak, his immense spiritual sense remained, sweeping thousands of kilometers, yet revealing nothing but mountains. "Where are we, Yuanju?" he asked. "This is the Mulan mountain range, Master. As always," the boy replied, puzzled. "My memories are muddled," Hanli said calmly. "Which immortal region is this?" "The Bramblewood continent of the Golden Origin Immortal region." Hanli had never heard of it. Clearly, this lay far beyond the northern glacial immortal region. His gaze drifted to the side. Nearly 100 time Dao runes had now faded. "Master, once you recover, we'll take revenge," Li Yuanju said through clenched teeth. From Ling Yunzi's remaining memories, Hanli saw the tale clearly. Once members of the Iron Beast sect, master and disciple had fallen after Ling Yunzi's father died. Resources stripped away, they were expelled and forced to wander. Recently, after slaying a beast for a precious spirit plant, they were robbed by former sect members, Ling Yunzi grievously wounded in the process. "The path of cultivation is cruel," Hanli said softly. "The strong survive, the weak perish. Your strength is insufficient. Revenge now is death." "Yes, master," the boy replied. Head lowered, sweeping his spiritual sense through Li Yuanju, Hanli paused. The boy possessed a false spiritual root with 4 attributes, just like himself. Cultivation slow, yet spiritual sense strong. Coincidence or fate? "Yuanju," Hanli said suddenly, My time is short. I will pass you a secret technique. Cultivate diligently and live well." "No, I only want you to live," the boy cried. Hanli's expression hardened. "Heaven no longer permits my existence. If you wish to honor me, listen." Before the boy could protest further, Hanli swept his sleeve. A burst of spiritual light shot forth, vanishing into Li Yuanju's brow in an instant. Chapter 370, Karma and Fate. The burst of spiritual radiance within Li Yuanju's mind shattered into innumerable minute runes, circling his head like drifting stars. None other than the Great Development Technique revealed in full. His body stiffened at once. Moments later, his eyes rolled back and he collapsed unconscious to the ground. With a sweep of his sleeve, Hanli released a strand of spiritual light that lifted Li Yuanju and carried him into the ruined temple. "It seems fate has led us to meet here. I have borrowed your master's body for a time, so I shall grant you this great development technique as recompense," he said calmly, already turning to depart. Yet surprise flickered across his face. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that Li Yuanju possessed an exceptional spirit physique, one that had yet to awaken. Intrigue stirred in Hanli's eyes. He swept his sleeve again, sending another streak of spiritual light into the youth. "So be it. To encounter one so similar to myself is rare. I will lend you a bit more help." Within Li Yuanju's mind, that light split in two. One strand burst apart, forming countless runes that outlined another cultivation art, the heaven-bearing devil arts. This was a technique Hanli had once obtained from Manhuzi. Long ago, he had promised to find it a successor, so it would not be lost, yet circumstances and his own breakthrough preparations had delayed him until now. By chance, Li Yuanju's spirit physique proved perfectly suited to it. The second strand of light shrank into a tiny speck and hid itself deep within Li Yuanju's mind. It contained yet another cultivation art, sharing the same roots as the Provenance True Devil Arts and the Heaven-Bearing Devil Arts. But its seal would only open should Li Yuanju one day reach the deity transformation stage. That path, however, was fraught with danger and uncertainty. Even with these arts, the odds of Li Yuanju reaching such a realm before his lifespan ended were vanishingly small, and his mediocre aptitude only worsened his prospects. Still, Hanli had done all he could. Though he had not planned to help, the youth's devotion to his master had moved him. With a quiet sigh, though Hanli shook his head and looked away, casting his gaze into the distance, he formed a hand seal and released his vast spiritual sense once more. Instantly, the world's origin chi within dozens of kilometers surged together, forming a white cloud. This secret technique allowed him to forcibly draw upon that chi, though it heavily taxed one's spiritual sense. Yet this borrowed body held too little magic power, and Ling Yunzi's storage tools were long gone. Without it, flight would have been impossible. Hanli rose onto the cloud. It churned briefly, then shot away like a streak of white light. The matter of Li Yuanju was insignificant now. What mattered was uncovering the truth of this place. There had to be a reason he had arrived here. He scanned the surroundings with eyes and spiritual sense alike, but after a long flight, all he saw was mundanity. To his left, the mantra-treasured axis projection hovered silently. Nearly half of the Time Dao runes upon it had already faded, his brows knit together. With another hand seal, the cloud accelerated. Soon after, he halted abruptly, gazing down into a hidden valley. Upon a cliff face bloomed a colossal purple flower, as large as a millstone. Its thick petals glowed with a vivid reddish-purple hue. From among them extended crimson feelers, each tipped with fist-sized droplets of liquid that exuded a sweet fragrance. Hanli descended before the flower, curiosity rising. It was clearly a spirit plant, its aura closely resembling that of the blood crystal lotus root. After a moment's hesitation, he flicked a finger, sending a fierce gust toward it. The flower trembled. Its feelers shot forth like lightning, intertwining into a massive net that fell toward him. Hanli's cloud retreated instantly. Evading the attack, the feelers whipped through the air as the petals gaped like a monstrous maw, emitting a shrill, frustrated screech. After a brief frenzy, the feelers withdrew and the petals stilled. Hanli raised a brow, contemplation flashing in his eyes. The plant was remarkable, yet nothing more. He departed at once, leaving the valley behind. As he continued, he discovered many more such giant purple flowers scattered throughout the mountains. all left untouched. Though puzzled, he did not linger. Instead, he hastened onward, forming more seals to increase his speed. Judging by the remaining Time Dao runes, his time was short. After flying a while longer, surprise and delight surfaced on his face. He stopped before a mountain pass. Within lay a cluster of buildings wrapped in flashing restrictions, streaks of light darting through the air, a sect. From Ling Yunzi's memories, he recognized it as the Iron Beast sect. Chanting softly, Han Li formed a seal. His spiritual sense rippled outward as the surrounding world's origin Qi gathered into a translucent veil around him. He descended swiftly into a plaza within the sect. As he searched Ling Yunzi's memories, his gaze settled on a nearby mountain where an azure pavilion stood, protected by the strongest restrictions in the sect. This was the scripture library, housing countless cultivation arts. Han Li flew toward it, but frowned at the restriction before it. Ordinarily, such a barrier would pose no challenge, yet this body's feeble magic power rendered his vast spiritual sense of little help. At that moment, a streak of light descended nearby, revealing an early core formation cultivator with an arrogant bearing. The instant Han Li saw him, the body shuddered as fury and resentment surged forth. This was the man who had gravely injured Ling Yunzi. Though Ling Yunzi was dead, his lingering will still burned with hatred. "Rest assured, I borrow your body, so I shall see some of your wishes fulfilled," Han Li thought coldly, fixing the man with an icy gaze. The man suddenly shivered, glancing around in alarm. Finding nothing, he swept his spiritual sense repeatedly, then scowled. Muttering curses, he raised a hand and sent an azure talisman into the restriction. "Open it! I'm here on the sect master's orders," he barked. A gray-robed elder appeared within, disdain flashing briefly before he smiled. "Please wait a moment, Administrator Wang." Producing a badge, he released a beam of light that opened the restriction. "Could you be any slower?" The man snorted, flying inside without a glance back. The elder's face darkened as he sealed the restriction once more. Yet neither noticed that, in the instant before it closed, a transparent figure had slipped silently into the scripture library as well.